Hi everyone, this is Sir Gantt back again with lesson 4 of my course in how to use Microsoft Project 2016. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how we can modify the calendars that apply to a project and how we can change working times. And we do that because if we tell project what our working hours are, we don't have to continually remember every time we schedule a task whether tomorrow or the day after is a working day or a non-working day. We've told project, and therefore it can make allowances accordingly. Specifically in the lesson, we're going to look at how we can modify the overall project calendar to show which days are non-working. In particular, that would be for the national holidays for the area in which you operate. We're going to look at how we can make sure that the Gantt chart displays working and non-working times for us for ease of visibility when we're planning our project out. We're also going to look at how we can modify the working hours and times for resources, the people working on our projects and other major pieces of equipment. The availability may vary resource to resource. In particular, if we've got some contracted resources, we need to make sure that the working hours specified in the contract are what we're planning to use. It's possible that certain tasks in our project may only happen at certain times of the day or certain times in the week. Maybe, for example, we're doing a fallback and recovery exercise as part of our IT project, in which case we probably want those activities to be happening outside of normal working hours so that we're not impacting the main operations of the organization. Now, once you've entered a lot of information into calendars about when the working hours are and working days are and are not, you don't want to have to continually do that over and over again every time you plan a new project. So we're going to be looking at how, once you've fed in the non-working hours and days one time, you can make those custom calendars available easily in other projects using the organizer feature. And it's worth mentioning that once you've got calendars for tasks and for resources and for the overall project, it's quite important to know which calendar takes precedence in a particular circumstance. So we'll be looking at that as well. This is lesson 4 of an 11-lesson course. If you take a look at the very last slide that I'll show at the end of this video, it gives you an overview of all of the lessons. In addition to that, the introduction and overview video for the course, I explain in a little bit of detail about what is contained in each lesson. Okay, if the course is helpful to you, then it's probably very helpful to me if you like and subscribe, like each of the videos and subscribe to the channel and let everybody else know that the course exists out there. I know people are always asked to do all of these things when they pretty much watch anything on YouTube, but thank you for doing that. I'd also be very grateful if you have the opportunity and feel inclined to buy me a coffee. Well, that would be great. It would be great if you could do it in person, but failing that, then you can go to buymeacoffee.com/SirGantalot, and I'd be very grateful. And if you don't do that, that's perfectly fine too. Thank you for watching the course anyway. Okay, to get the best out of each of the lessons, I suggest that firstly, you set the quality on YouTube to the highest available. That way the screens are clearer and not fuzzy. And then if you can, open up another screen or a separate computer with Microsoft Project loaded on it and follow along as I do things. I'll try to move at a pace that you can keep up with me. But if I do get ahead of you, if I am going too fast, then just pause, rewind, and you should be able to watch again what it is was the point I was covering. Okay, if you hold a credential with the Project Management Institute, you can claim PDUs or at least submit PDUs for watching these videos, and you can see the category underneath that label there that you can use for those professional development units. So that being the case, let's open up Microsoft Project. So when we get to Microsoft Project, we can see that if you go to the File New tab, if it doesn't open to this specific screen, do that, File and New, and then click on Blank Project to select, and then one more time to launch a blank project. It's possible the project went straight to a blank project for you when you opened it, A lot depends on how it's configured in your organization. If it did that, that's fine, as long as you're at this screen now, a blank project. A couple of things I'm going to do. Firstly, I'm going to click on the View tab and make sure that Timeline is unchecked. That gives us a bit more real estate on the screen here. Secondly, look at the bottom left. On my screen, it says New Tasks Auto-Scheduled. If yours says that, that's fine. On the other hand, if yours says New Tasks Manually Scheduled, I'd like you to change it to Auto-Scheduled, please. Just click on there and click Auto-Scheduled. Okay, so let's just look at what we've got in front of us. We've got the Gantt chart over here, and you can see already out of the box that Project treats Saturdays and Sundays as non-working and Monday through Friday as working. Now, that may not be the case for you, and we'll look at how we can change the work week later. But let's see what happens if I just leave the default as it is. Notice the start of the project just defaulted to what is today for me here. And if I type in a task, let's say code software, and I make it a 5-day task. Of course, as soon as I hit enter, it defaults to 1 day question mark. But if I put 5, take a look at what's happening over there. Here's a 5 working day task that I've created. And because it starts on Wednesday, it runs Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's the first 3 days of the task. And then the last 2 days of the task are Monday and Tuesday. So when you type in a duration, Project takes that as working days according to the calendar which is in effect. And right now, the standard project calendar is in effect because I haven't changed or modified anything. And even though the bar paints itself through the weekend here, it's still 5 working days for the activity itself. It just paints it through there so that it doesn't have to sort of break the bar for you. Now, here's the thing. Project, as I mentioned, treats every day, Monday through Friday, as a working day, and every Saturday and every Sunday as a non-working day. That means that holidays such as in the United States, the 4th of July, in many countries, Christmas Day, 25th of December, are very often non-working. In fact, they're national holidays. But Project doesn't know that. So if I wanted a particular day to be a national holiday, I would have to tell Project that, and then it would treat those non-working days just as if they are Saturdays and Sundays. Now, this project has defaulted to start today, which is the 19th of January 2022. And there are no imminent holidays. There was a holiday in the United States on Monday. It was Dr. Martin Luther King's national holiday. But there are no imminent upcoming holidays. So let's just imagine that there is one. Let's just imagine that Monday here is a holiday. So it'll be Monday, 31st of January. But before we do that, let's make this task here 15 days. It's a 15-day task. It runs from today and it finishes Tuesday in basically 3 weeks' time. So it's a 15 working day task. So note that it finishes on the Tuesday. Now, if I now tell Microsoft Project that this day right here, the 31st of January, is a holiday, it will treat it as if it is a Saturday or a Sunday, and it will push the finish date 1 day later because I've got one additional non-working day in the train of events here. So let's see how we would do that. So the first thing we're going to do is click on the Project tab up here, and then click on Change Working Time. Notice that I have some visibility of what the standard project calendar has in terms of working days and non-working days. Essentially, as I've mentioned a couple of times, all Saturdays, and you can select any Saturday, and it tells you that's a non-working day. Any Sunday, Saturday and Sunday. Yes, any Saturday or any Saturday is a non-working day. Any other day, Monday through Friday, it tells me what the working hours are. So note the standard working hours that Project defaults to, basically 8 through 5 with a 1 hour lunch break. You really don't have to worry about the lunch break too much. It's essentially 5 working days. And any day that you hover over, it will tell you what the arrangement is for that day, including the day that we're going to change, which is the 31st. So for the standard project calendar, which is going to apply to every activity by default and to every resource by default until we create custom calendars for resources or tasks, but by default, everything in the project will obey whatever calendar is in effect for the overall project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the 31st, and then in this tab down the bottom, exception, I'm going to make that an exception to what a Monday would normally be. And I'm going to say late January holiday. I'm inventing a national holiday here or an organizational holiday, the late January holiday. And as soon as I click down here, let me just pull this over a little bit, we'll see a couple of things happen. Firstly, we're going to see that Monday get grayed out, just like all the other Saturdays and Sundays are grayed out, because now that Monday is going to be non-working as well. And secondly, because this is a 15 working day task, the finish date is going to be extended by 1 day. So let's make sure that happens. Let's click here, OK. And you'll see exactly what I said would happen. Monday, that Monday is now being treated as a non-working day, and the finish day extended by 1 day. Now, let's go back to the change working time box again. And when I said I was going to be changing the standard project calendar, that's what happened. That's the one that applies by default. But out of the box, Project does ship with 2 other calendars, a night shift calendar and a 24-hour calendar. If you want to dig into what those are, by all means do so. As soon as you select one, it shows you a different set of working and non-working days. Their night shift calendar has different hours here, and different days are working or non-working. On a Sunday, for example, just the on a Saturday, just the 2 early shifts happen, but Sundays are not working. Let's go back to the standard project calendar. So we've added in 1 holiday here. And typically what you would do is before you start the project, before you start entering a lot of information, you would run down through here and add in the national and organizational holidays that apply. So you would go with Memorial Day and Labor Day and Veterans Day, and in the US, the 4th of July and Thanksgiving, and so on. In the United Kingdom, you have the spring bank holiday and things of that type. So add those all in and go out, I would say, probably about double the length of your project. So if it's a 2-year project, I would probably put in 3 to 4 years worth of holidays. That's typically what I would do. Okay, now over here on the right, as I said, when I changed the standard project calendar, we saw these non-working hours appear. Monday became non-working, and it was actually displayed in the Gantt chart. And the reason it does that, and I'm just going to close this box here, is over on the right. If I right-click just in a blank area and say non-working time, it tells me that it's going to display over here the non-working time for the standard project calendar. If I chose a different calendar, let's say like the night shift calendar, and applied, then I get a different situation because I did not make Monday a day off in the night shift calendar. I only did it for the standard project calendar. Now, it's more likely that you're going to be changing the display over here if you create a custom calendar with its own name. But let's just go back. Let's right-click here and say for non-working time, I want to show the situation for the standard project calendar, the one which applied by default when I first opened up project, and the one to which I added an additional day off. Now, by default, when you create a project, the standard project calendar is the one which is applied to the project. To show you what I mean by that, on the project tab again, let's click project information. And it tells you that for this project, when it was created, the standard calendar is the one which is in effect. And of course, I could have chosen the night shift calendar or the 24-hour calendar if I wanted to. So just to be clear, it's on project and project information where you say which calendar applies to the project, and it's on project and change working time where you modify calendars. Okay, so you go in two slightly different ways to manipulate calendars. If you want to change the timing of the calendars, then you do so by coming in here. Okay, let's cancel out of there. Let's now assign a resource to work on this task. So to do that, I'm going to create a resource. I'm going to go to the Resource tab, and I'm going to drop down where it says Team Planner and go to the Resource Sheet. And I'm going to type in here Jill. Let's put in Jill as a resource. Now, as soon as I started typing in Jill and then hit Enter, notice that this says Standard. If I hover over it, it says Base Calendar. So the base calendar for Jill, at the point I created her, was based on the standard project calendar, including the additional non-working day that I created for her. Now, it may well be that Jill has some additional days when she's not working. So let's see how that might take effect. Let's go back to the View tab here. Click on Gantt chart. Now, right now, Jill, because when I created Jill as a resource, she inherited information from the standard project calendar, she has exactly these same working and non-working times, including that Monday. She's not working on that Monday because she inherited that information from the standard project calendar. And what that means is if I assign Jill to work on this task, so if I right-click and go to Assign Resources, and here is Jill, and I click Assign, all that happens is it tells me that Jill, I've planned for her to do that work. And that's fine. It hasn't changed the duration of this task for any reason because Jill has the same calendar as does the overall project. Let's just take a look at that a moment. Let's double check that that is the case. Let's go back to Resource. Let's drop down here and go to the Resource Sheet. Whoops, wrong one. Let's go to the Resource Sheet. I did that deliberately, of course. Resource Sheet, just to show you how many views there are. And let's double-click Jill. So here's Jill. Let's double-click Jill. And let's look at the General tab. And notice down here, Change Working Time. But for Jill this time, not for the overall project. And notice that Jill does indeed currently have that Monday as a holiday because the entire organization has that Monday as a holiday. If I click on it, it says that it's an exception. It's the late January holiday on the standard calendar. But Jill wants to take advantage of this situation because Monday is a day off. She also wants to take 27th and 28th. She wants to take those 2 days off as well. So I'm going to make those a vacation for Jill only, an exception to the calendar just for Jill. So I'll make that vacation for Jill. I'm going to click OK. Now, let's think about what might happen when I do that. So I've clicked OK and OK. Let's go back to our Gantt chart a moment and notice what's happened to that task. Because Jill has got a couple of extra days off, she's not just taking that Monday per the standard project calendar. We also said she's taking Thursday and Friday. So those are non-working for Jill, and therefore the 15 working days, the finish of that task, has pushed out 2 additional days. You probably remember a few moments ago it was Wednesday. Now it's gone out 2 additional days. Note, though, that Jill's calendar doesn't show here because I said I want the standard project calendar to show here. Because after all, I'm going to have dozens of tasks with lots of different resources working on there. But if I do look at that and I think, hang on a minute, why did that task change in duration? I might think, maybe that's because Jill's got some additional non-working time in here. And I could take a look. I could right click here and say, okay, for non-working time, what I want to display here is Jill's calendar. Let's take a look. And indeed, Jill's got a couple of extra non-working days. And now I think to myself, okay, now I see why the finish date has pushed out. So I'm going to change this back to the standard display, showing the project, a standard project calendar. That's not going to change any timings or dates. All I'm doing is changing the display of the non-working time. Jill still does have those 2 days off. It's just I've chosen not to display that there. Okay, so I've looked at a situation where we've got the standard project calendar, and we've got Jill has got a couple of additional days off. Now let's do one additional step with Jill's calendar. Let's change her work week. Let's acknowledge the fact that Jill is actually working for us under contract, and Jill doesn't work any Fridays. We've already said that she's not working these particular 2 Fridays because she's taking some vacation. But per her contract, she doesn't work any Fridays at all. So let's take a look at how we would take a look at changing and reflecting Jill's calendar so that she doesn't work any Fridays. So if we go to Project and change working time, I can drop down here. Now I could have gone to the resource sheet and double-clicked Jill and gone to her calendar that way, but another way that I can get to Jill's calendar is to go to Project, change working time, and select her calendar here. Like several things, I've mentioned this on many of the lessons in the course, there are different ways you can do the same thing in Microsoft Project. Okay, so this is Jill's calendar, which was originally based on the standard project calendar, but now we're looking at her calendar here. Now what I could do, I guess, laboriously, I could go in and mark every single Friday as non-working. That's something I could do. But another way I could do that is down here. Instead of putting a whole bunch of exceptions, I could click on work weeks. And then for her default work week, I could go over to details here. And notice I get a preview of what the situation is for Jill for various days of the week. Sunday, for example, no work. Monday, she works 8 a.m. to 12, 1 to 5. In other words, she inherited all of that from the standard project calendar, and that applies to every day except Saturdays and Sundays. But here's what I could do. I could select Friday, and I could say set days, all Fridays, in other words, to non-working time, and click OK. Project immediately does that down here. It shows me a preview that every Friday from now forever, Jill is not working. In other words, her contract says she just works 4 days a week. And of course, in the case of this Thursday, she's also got that one off as a vacation that we did before. But when I now click OK, because Jill doesn't work any Fridays, the finish date of that 15 working day task gets pushed out even further. And again, I could right click here. I could go to non-working time and display the situation for Jill here. Just to remind myself, indeed, she doesn't work any Fridays, and not only that, Thursday of that week is also a vacation day. But typically, I would not, over on the Gantt chart, show anything other than the calendar which applies to the project. And the reason for that is that lots of tasks and lots of resources are going to be working on the project, and you don't want to muddy the waters too much here. So for non-working time, my best practice that I follow is to have the standard project calendar showing there. One other thing that I'd like to show you is how we could have a situation where certain tasks only happen during non-working hours. So, for example, let's say I have a task which says repair elevators. I expect probably what's going to happen is that's going to take about 10 working days. 10 working days to happen. But the reality is I don't want any of the work to be happening on Wednesday through Friday or Monday through Friday or Tuesday and Wednesday, because I only want the work to be happening at the weekends so that I have peace and quiet, that people who are trying to get around the building, they don't have to go up and down the stairs because the elevators are being worked on. So let's see how we might do that. The first thing is I would create a custom calendar for repairing the elevators. So let's go to change working time, and I'm going to create a new calendar based on the standard calendar. All right, notice it defaults to say copy of standard calendar. I'm going to say elevator repair. Click OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set so that only at the weekends does any work happen and not during the week. So let's see how we can make that happen. And you might remember the best way to do that is using the work week tab here. So the default work week, I'm going to go to details, and I'm going to say, okay, so for Sunday, I'm going to default that to work from, I'm going to say, set days to these specific working times. So on a Sunday, I'm going to go from, I'm going to click in here, 8 until noon. And then I'm going to go from 1 until 5. So that's fine. I'm going to do the same thing on Saturdays. I'm going to go set days to these specific working times. I'm going to go 8. By the way, as soon as I just put in 12 and hit enter or go to the next cell, project assumes I mean 12 p.m. there. Therefore, if I go 1, it assumes I mean 1 p.m. 5, it assumes I mean 5 p.m. If that's not what you want, then you can fix that. So now I've got Sundays and Saturdays are work days, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make Monday through Friday non-working, and click OK, and click OK. Now, at this point, all I've done is I've created a calendar for this task, but I haven't assigned it to the task yet. To do that, I have to double click the task so that the task information box pops up. I'm going to click advanced. Now, that's not a big deal. Anytime you see advanced, it doesn't really mean advanced. It just means more stuff. Now that I've opened up that, I'm going to change the calendar that applies to this task. Now, when it says none, that doesn't actually mean none. It means nothing other than the standard project calendar. But I'm going to change it. And here's my elevator repair calendar that I created. I'm going to click OK. And now notice what happens. That activity is essentially only going to be happening at the weekends. And that's how we get the 10 days of work happening. We've got 2 days here. We've got 2 days there because bear in mind that Monday is a holiday for everybody. 2 days here, 2 days here, and 2 days here. And if you think, well, that doesn't look right, well, we just need to be able to see over on here just to remind you that it is indeed right. Let's right click on here. Let's show non-working time for the elevator repair calendar and click OK. And now you can see that it's only these 10 days here over 5 weekends when the work is actually happening. Again, the bar gets painted continuously from start to finish, but nevertheless, it is only during these white times that those 10 days of work are actually happening. Okay, I'm going to take this back to show the standard project calendar again. So just bear with me while I do that. I'm going to display the standard project calendar in terms of showing the working and non-working times. It hasn't changed any of the timing of that task. It's just a question of what I'm displaying. Okay, so we're almost done. Let's say, though, that you have another project and it would be helpful to you to have the repair elevators calendar in that new project. So let's go here to File and New. I'm going to create a blank project. This one's blank I won't bother saving hiding the timeline or anything. I'm going to leave it there actually so that we can see the difference. Let's have a new task to repair elevators. Okay, so I'm going to have probably spend about 14 days working on that. I remember to myself, I need to show the calendar and assign the calendar to that task. So I double click the task and I go over to the advanced tab and I see calendar and I drop that down and I go to, oh, it's not there. I haven't created it, I think to myself. And I think, well, that's a bit of a pain. I'm going to have to create that calendar all over again. So let's see how we can avoid having to do that. So let's just remind ourselves what we're looking at here. We're looking at, I'm just going to close that down. We're looking at a new project here with a 14-day elevator repair task. But if I go back to my other project, project 1, that's the one that has the calendar in it. Incidentally, in the indicators column, if you have it displayed, if you do have a task calendar assigned, it'll tell you in the indicators column. So it says the calendar elevator repair is assigned to the task. But I can't assign it in the other project because it doesn't exist in the other project. So project 1 does have that calendar. Project 2, if I go down here, does not have that calendar. It doesn't even exist, so I can't assign it here. So how can I fix that? Well, what I can do is if you want to copy a calendar from one project to another to save you having to repeat it and rebuild it every time, what you can do is you can open up something called the organizer. You have to have both projects open. You have to have the one open from which you want to take the calendar, and you have to have the one open into which you wish to place the calendar. So I've got them both open here. It doesn't matter which one is live here. What you do is you go to File, and where it says on the Info tab, so typically if you hit File, it will go to the Info tab. If not, select the Info tab, and then select this thing here called the Organizer. And what I'm going to do is on this set of things at the left, I'm going to say I want to see the situation for project 1, and over here, I want to see the situation for project 2. And then I want to look at calendars. And you'll see that project 1 indeed has that calendar showing because I created it. Over here, though, it doesn't have the elevator repair calendar. All I have to do is select it and hit copy. And now it's in project 2 as well. That's all I have to do. I don't have to save at this point. I mean, obviously you have to save the project when I'm ready to roll, but I can just close my organizer and I'm in project 2. I can just go back to the Gantt chart, just make sure you're in project 2. And now that elevator repair calendar exists in project 2 as well. And to demonstrate that is indeed the case, if I double click on the task and on the advanced tab of the task information box, when I look at calendar here, I can drop that down and the elevator repair calendar now does exist in this project as well. And when I assign it, it adjusts the working times of the project accordingly, of that task accordingly. And again, we can see that little icon there to remind me that the reason that looks a bit odd there, a 14-day task seems to be taking so long, is that there's a task calendar assigned to it. So here's what I would do, actually. Rather than modifying the standard project calendar every time for every new project, what I would do instead for a project, for any project that you start, I would say, okay, so let's say this is the first project that you've done any of this calendar stuff for. I would, rather than modifying the standard project calendar, I would say, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to go to Project and change working time. And I'm going to create a new calendar based on the standard calendar. And I'm going to call it calendar for XXX Corp, or whatever your organization's name is. Then what I would do is I would go through, and in this calendar, I would create all of my non-working times. So let's say the 31st is an exception. I would say late Jan holiday. And then what I might do is go down into February. Let's go to March 15. Actually, let's make it March, February the 14th, and let's make that St. Valentine's Day. Let's say our organization is a very caring organization and gives us St. Valentine's Day as a day off. And I would go through, of course, put in all the national holidays that apply. And I would go forward several years, in fact, and then I would click OK. Then what I would do is anytime I start a new project, I would make sure that that calendar is available and is applied as the project calendar. So let's do that for this project first. Let's go to project information. And for the calendar, let's make sure that we use the calendar for XXX Corp. And any new project I create, I would use that calendar. So one way you could do that, of course, is if you create project 3 now, you could go to File, I could go to New, I could create a new blank project, and I could say, okay, before I do anything else, I'm going to copy over that calendar from project 2. So I could go to File, and I could go to the Info tab on the Organizer. I could say, okay, over here I want project 2. Over here is project 3. When I look at calendars, I want to copy that calendar for my organization over into here. So I could do that. But even that, you might be thinking, well, hang on, that's a bit of a rigmarole every time I do a new project. So the last thing you could do that would make life even easier for yourself is instead of copying that calendar into every new project every time, on a one-time basis, you could copy it into something called Global MPT. And if you can copy that calendar into Global MPT, and then all you have to do is close. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to pollute the environment here, but copy that over and then close the organizer. From that point forward, any new project you open will have that organizational calendar in there. Okay, so hopefully that was clear. If I lost you at any point going through there, then just rewind and you can pick up on that best practice. Add the calendars, make one calendar that reflects all of your standard non-working times, all of your holidays, all of your organizational and national holidays. Give it a specific name, apply it as the project calendar, but also copy it into the global template. Don't forget, though, that when you create a new project, you're going to have to assign that calendar as the project calendar. It will be available because it's in Global MPT, but you have to assign it still as the project calendar. Okay, just before we finish, let's go to project 1 again. And just looking at this screen here, you know that we've got a standard project calendar where that day there is the day off. Here, we've got repairing the elevators, and that's a situation that has its own calendar. Well, what if we assigned Jill to work on that? Because Jill has her own working calendar, and repairing the elevators has its calendar. So let's see what happens if we assign Jill. So let's assign a resource and assign Jill to do that work. And of course, we're going to have sort of an interesting conflict of calendars. And in fact, it tells me that right now. It says, we don't really have enough working time for Jill to work on that. And here's the hierarchy. The hierarchy of calendars is that if there are no other calendars assigned other than there is a standard project calendar, that applies to everything. It applies to all of the resources and it applies to all of the tasks. If you have a task calendar, then that overrides the project calendar. If you then assign a resource, The resource calendar, if it's different than the task calendar, tries to override the task calendar. And before long, you can end up with all sorts of conflicts going on and alert messages and so on. So what you could do is you could double click here on this task, repair the elevators, and on the advanced tab, it tells us that we've got the elevator repair calendar assigned, but we still got an issue. We know that because we then tried to assign Jill, who has her own calendar, which conflicts with it. So what we could do is check this little box here. Scheduling ignores resource calendars, and then click OK. Now, the alert that it cannot even happen has gone away, but we do get a little symbol that says that Jill is over allocated. The reason she's over allocated is that normally she doesn't work at the weekends, but at least we're not having an absolute conflict between her calendar and the elevator calendar anymore. But we are showing her as over allocated at the weekends. Well, what we could probably do is have a quiet word with Jill and say, Jill, we'll pay you overtime if you work at the weekends. So the standard hierarchy of calendars basically is that resource calendars override task calendars and task calendars override the project calendar. Unless, and the unless, just to remind you, double click the resource, the task here. And if I say I want to ignore resource calendars, then resource calendars no longer override the task calendar. One thing just occasionally people want to know is, well, how can I just ignore calendars altogether? Let's just put in here, task, a task, and let's make it a 5-day task. Let's go back to the beginning of this project. It was defaulted to 1 day. In fact, let's make it a 10-day working day task. So notice that that 10-day task, I've got 3 days here, 5 days here, and then 2 days that week. And those 2 days are Tuesday and Wednesday because Monday is non-working. If I want a task just to start and last for 10 elapsed days and ignore all calendars and just be 10 elapsed working days, a little tip for you, you could type in here 10 e-days. Just for that one task, it ignores all calendars. So it is literally 10 elapsed days. And those actually are working days for that task now. So 10 straight days, one after the other, including those 2 days of the weekend. So little tips, not often encountered, but occasionally just for a particular task, you might want to ignore all calendars. That would even apply for the repair elevators. If I did that, I could say 10 e-days, 10 e-days, and it would just ignore the calendar assigned to that, and it ignores Jill's calendar as well. So e-days is a handy little thing to have up your sleeve, if you like, on a case-by-case basis at the task level. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to cover in this lesson. Let's just recap what we covered. Just bear with me 1 second. So what we covered in this lesson is we looked at adding non-working days to the project calendar for national holidays and for organizational holidays. We looked at how we can decide what we want to show in the Gantt chart in terms of non-working hours, whether it's the standard project calendar, which is what I would suggest, or whether you want to show, maybe just temporarily to try and work out what's going on, a calendar for a particular task or a particular resource. So in addition to modifying calendars for the overall project, we also did so for resources, and not just showing specific non-working days. You remember Jill, we gave her Thursday and Friday of a particular week off. We could also change the overall working week for resources. And we did that for Jill as well. We said typically she doesn't work any Fridays. We looked at task calendars. We looked at the elevator calendar, how we can create it and then assign it to a task. We also looked at how we could create custom calendars once we've created them and make them available in other projects, or put them into global MPT and then they're available in any new project that we create. And lastly, we looked at the hierarchy of calendars. Typically, resource calendars trump task calendars, which override the project calendar unless you specify that the task calendar should ignore a resource calendar. Just a final reminder, if you do find these lessons helpful, then let other people know about them. And for your own personal use, maybe just enable notifications so that when I load additional courses and additional lessons in this course, then you'll be notified accordingly. And once again, if you feel like buying me a coffee, you can do so by buymeacoffee.com/SirGantalot. I did say that at the end of this course, I would just remind you of some of the other lessons that exist. We've just worked through lesson 4. There are 11 lessons altogether. In addition to this straight course, end-to-end course, I'm going to be doing a number of deep dive videos. Project is one of those things you can peel back the onion skins and get deeper and deeper and deeper in pretty much any topic that we cover. But for this session, we'll close out at this point. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for taking part in the lesson. Hopefully you were able to follow along. And I'll see you back here for additional lessons going forward. Thanks again.